Hello and welcome to cheapsheds.com. This video will show you how to make the door for your shed using the plans available on my website at cheapsheds.com. This is video number 6 in my 12 video series on how to build a shed. This door construction method saves time and money because it uses the materials that are cut out of the rough opening that would otherwise be thrown away. It consists of an outer frame which is built into the shed wall and an inner frame which is the actual door. These two are framed and sheeted at the same time. Then in step 7 you'll cut the door out and install the hinges and latch. You can build your door with any opening width up to about 60 inches, and you can put it on a gable end or on a side wall and in any location. You can also build your shed with multiple doors. The only difference between a side door and a door on the gable end is which king stud you will use. For a door in the gable end, use a square cut stud. For a door in a side wall, use a stud with an angle on it. If you're building the door in a side wall, remember to build with the short side of the angle up toward the siding. Otherwise, there is no difference in the construction. You can also place the door anywhere on the wall you like. However, I recommend that you place it on some increment of 12 inches from the corner. This way your stud spacing will be covered by figure 5B. Otherwise, you might have to add an additional vertical upright if the siding breaks where there is no stud in the inner door frame. To make the door wider or narrower, adjust the door header to your desired rough opening size, then cut the horizontal cross pieces and trim to fit. See figure 5A for your dimensions, then cut the jack studs, king studs, and header. Build a sandwich door header by nailing a piece of scrap siding or OSB between two 2x4s. This extra ½ inch makes the total header width 3½ inches, which is the same width as a 2x4 stud. Nail the jack studs to the king studs, then nail or screw the header in place. Measure and mark the bottom plates and top plates. Nail the door frame and the rest of the wall studs to the top and bottom plates. Cut 8 3x3 spacers from the scraps of siding you trimmed from the gable end. Put the spacers loosely inside the outer frame, 2 into both top corners and 2 into both bottom corners. These are to keep the inside door frame from shifting until you get it nailed to the siding. See figure 5B for the inner door frame dimensions to measure and cut 4 cross pieces and 3 uprights. For 10 wide sheds only, you will need 1 more upright and change the spacing as indicated in figure 5B, so there will be a stud where the siding breaks. Lay all the pieces in the door frame to check for fit. Everything should fit tight. Remove the inner door frame pieces and lay them on the floor and assemble everything with screws. Verify that this assembly lays flat and is not warped in any direction. Lay this inner door frame inside the outer door frame with the spacers at the top and sides. It should fit tight and not move around. For a gable end wall, install the truss with a 3-inch screw at each end and remember the ½ inch spacer below the collar beam. Check for square by comparing diagonal measurements. Measure and record the distance from the center of the stud where the siding breaks to the inside edge of the rough opening in both directions. This measurement should be 21 3/4 of an inch for 8 and 12 wide shed doors, or 9 3/4 and 33 3/4 for a 10 wide shed door. These measurements will be used to locate the vertical cut lines after the siding is nailed in place. Lay the first piece of siding in place. Square it up to the center stud and check for a proper overhang at the bottom. Put a nail through the siding into the inner door frame bottom cross piece about 2 inches from the edge of the siding, but do not nail into the bottom plate because doing so will nail the door shut. Put another nail in the center door cross piece and the top door cross piece, and then in the top plate. Double check the overhang measurement at the outside edge of the bottom plate and put a nail at the outside ends of the top and bottom plates. Place a mark on the siding 1/2 inch above the bottom edge of the header. Make sure this mark is visible when the second piece of siding is installed. Lay the next piece of siding in place and put 4 nails in to match the nails in the first piece of siding. Then check the bottom overhang and put a nail into the outer ends of the top and bottom plates. Snap a chalk line along the center of the top and bottom plates and along the top of the truss where you will trim it. These are nail lines. Nail across the top plate only. Do not nail the bottom plate at this time. And nail the outside studs and along the truss inside the chalk line. Measure from the top of the siding to the mark you made 1/2 inch above the bottom of the door header and transfer this measurement to both ends of the wall and snap a chalk line. This is the horizontal cut line for the top of the door. Measure from the top of the siding to the middle of the door center cross piece as evidenced by the nail heads. Transfer these measurements to both edges of the wall and snap a chalk line. This is also a nail line. For 8 wide sheds, place a pencil mark at the top and bottom of the siding 22 1/4 inch from the middle of the center stud in both directions. This should be half the rough opening width plus 1/2 inch in either direction. This is the 21 3/4 inch measurement you took above just before you nailed the first piece of siding. Do the same type of calculation with the different door stud locations if you are building a 10 wide shed or if you're changing the door location. Snap a chalk line on both of these marks. These are the 2 vertical cut lines. Now you should have 2 vertical chalk lines, 4 horizontal chalk lines, plus the chalk lines across the top of the truss of the gable end walls. See Figure 5E inner door trim. Measure and cut a piece of trim to fit between the 2 vertical cut lines at the top cut line. Place the top edge of this piece at the top cut line and nail it 3/4 inch from its bottom edge and within 2 inches of each end. Measure and cut 2 vertical pieces to run from the bottom of this piece to the bottom edge of the siding. Nail these 3/4 inch from their inside edge from top to bottom to within 2 inches of the bottom plate chalk line. Measure and cut the last 2 horizontal trim pieces. Position the middle piece of the trim so it's centered on the chalk line and nail it down the middle. Position the bottom piece of trim so the lower edge lies on the bottom plate chalk line and nail it 3/4 inch from its top edge. See Figure 5F outer door trim. Cut 5 spacers from scrap trim about 1 inch wide. Lay 2 of these spacers along the top trim piece and the other 3 on the outside of the first vertical piece of trim. Lay a piece of trim horizontal along the top 2 spacers and another piece vertical along the other 3 spacers and pull them tight into the spacers. Measure and cut the vertical piece of trim so that it extends between the bottom of the siding to 7/16 inch above the top edge of the top horizontal trim as allowed by the spacer. Nail this in place along the center of the trim. Move the 3 spacers to the other vertical trim piece and measure and cut and install the same way. Then measure, cut and install the horizontal piece across the top of the 2 vertical pieces you just installed. Double check your spacing. In step 7, you will run a router inside the groove between these trim pieces and cut the door out. So double check that this spacing is correct by removing the collar from the router and running it all the way through the gap between the inner and outer trim. This will confirm the width is correct and the router will move properly. Thanks for watching this video on how to make a shed door. The next video in this series is raising your shed walls. To buy the plans to build a shed and to see all my shed building videos, go to my website at cheapsheds.com.